Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of ClefNotes. I am Nia Threatt, the Patron Services Coordinator at the Lubbock Symphony, and I'm here with another first-time guest, Eric Allen. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Nia. Well, thanks for having me. Yes, I am a music director at several places here in town. I'm very fortunate I'm an associate professor of music and associate director of bands at Texas Tech. I'm also the director of music ministries at First United Methodist Church in downtown Lubbock, and I also serve as the artistic director and conductor of the Lubbock Chamber Orchestra, or the Lubbock Symphony Chamber Orchestra, as part of the Lubbock Symphony.
That is a handful, a mouthful, and everything full. And equally speaking, I also do a lot around town, so I understand having, just a bit of influence in all the different musical categories that we offer here in Lubbock. Just for you all, I am, like I said, a staff member at the Lubbock Symphony Orchestra. I also do some visual work on campus at Texas Tech, and I'm a local DJ, so you may have seen me around your favorite clubs or lounges or different birthday parties and things like that, even at the Lubbock Symphony DJing events there. But one of the main things that I wanted to talk about for this episode is really to break down some of those differences between band and orchestra. Because for a lot of people who aren't in the music world, those terms are synonymous. And in some contexts, they can be. However, there's a clear difference. So who better than to ask but Eric Allen himself? So do you have any first thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's a great question. And, we do sometimes, I think, in the musical mediums, we sometimes silo the idea of band and orchestra. And there are some clear differences, you're right. But the function, in a lot of ways, is very similar. I think probably the best way to look at it is historically, bands are typically made up of wind instruments and percussion. So when I say wind instruments, also including all the woodwinds and the brass instruments, all of a variety of percussion instruments. The idea of band and using just winds and ensembles, is very historical. And I'll go back just as far as the classical era, back in the late 18th century. In Europe, the aristocracy would hire groups of instrumentalists that were wind players to play at special events, and it was known as harmony music. Now, harmony meant a small group of wind players. Of course, not. We think of harmony as a musical term, but in this regard, it was known as a group of wind players, and they would utilize wind players because they were versatile. So the wind instruments could be used outdoors, and there was just a practicality of having wind players that could serve as incidental music for state dinners but also major events outdoors, sometimes for a variety of things. Band kind of developed in Europe and eventually in the United States as part of that, and it was associated with the military and all kinds of things. But the idea of band really, the idea of having instrumental ensembles without strings, if you will, some of it was just more of practicality. There was a utilitarian reason for it. It was just we could hear them better outdoors. They produced more sound, and they were more versatile to be an outdoor instrument. Now, fast forward, there's a lot of history in between then and now. Fast forward, the band world really kind of evolved as kind of a public school, in the school and academia arenas, if you will, for music. And really after World War I, bands became really prevalent in public schools, whether involved in sporting events. And and a lot of people, when they think of the word band, they think of marching band. You go to a Tech football game, and we see the going band from Raiderland, and we think of band as being that. But band also evolved as an indoor medium as well, and produced a lot of concerts and things like that. And in the middle of the 20th century, right around 1952 to be exact, Frederick Fennell at Eastman School of Music developed a concept that we use now is the wind ensemble. And the wind ensemble is an idea that was created to allow the band, the wind band, the concert version of the wind band to evolve as a serious artistic medium. You know, and so when we think about orchestra developing, there's a long history. We have hundreds of years of repertoire that's built. The wind band is a little newer as far as a serious artistic medium, but we still have a lot of repertoire that's building. But the two exist in academia almost equally as far as the indoor ideas, the symphony orchestra and the band medium, the wind ensemble medium. They both kind of exist in that way. So the orchestra has, you know, this classical repertoire, and obviously strings is probably when we think of it, that's probably the most obvious variable. However, one of the things I think that's important is to know that as the wind ensemble has developed, some of the music has started to utilize more string instruments periodically. So it's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, that intertwining of the two and how they've, you know, I guess, like you said, academically in schools, they're treated kind of as equals. I remember growing up in band, on the band side of things, and having friends that did both, and how we would kind of be experiencing like the same thing, just holding different instruments. It wasn't like they were doing something drastically different than us. In fact, there was many moments where we would do concerts or maybe singular programs together as a big group with winds and band and obviously percussion and brass and all that stuff. So that's pretty interesting to know that there is such a distinction at the beginning, and then because of academia, they kind of have honed in on a similar line. Coming from a director point of view, and not essentially, but also being a conductor of both of those types of groups, is there a different way that you feel or that you approach conducting band versus orchestra, or maybe a mixed group between the two?
Well, that's a really good question. I think one other defining issue, I don't know if I call it an issue, but distinction is that there are a lot of professional symphony orchestras, and we know this when we think of classical music. Most people associate it with a symphony orchestra. There aren't a lot of professional wind bands. Wind band has not. I mean, there are some, but the military, of course, has professional wind bands. We have the Dallas Wind. The Dallas Winds. There are some groups in Europe and Asia, and other semi-professional groups within the United States, but not the prevalence that we think of when we think of the Chicago Symphony and the New York Philharmonic. And so the approach, the wind band is evolving, but it's not quite considered in that professional arena yet that we hope it will become. That we want it to be an equal player in the media, you know, as a medium. My approach, first of all, I should say that I consider myself extremely fortunate to be able to conduct wind bands, to be able to conduct choir at the church, and to be able to also conduct an orchestra with the Lubbock Symphony. The approach to music, to me, is the same. I think I conduct music because it's music. Pedagogically, when we think about teaching or when we're in rehearsal, there are certain things that are probably different that when we think about the repertoire. The Lubbock Chamber Orchestra, a lot of our repertoire comes from the classical era or early Romantic era, where the strings, when we're doing full orchestra pieces, the strings have the prominent role. The wind parts are important, but maybe don't have quite as much time as in melodic structure as the strings do. Whereas in the wind band, I mean, there are no strings, and so the winds do it all. And so sometimes the approach is a little different in pacing. There's a fatigue factor that can set in with winds that is not, and there's certainly fatigue factor with strings as well, but it's different. It functions a little bit differently. So there's a different way of pacing rehearsals, I suppose.
Yeah, and I guess when you're actively using your breath to make the music, there is definitely some fatigue there. I was a percussionist, so that's something that I've really never had to deal with. So I can only imagine what that is like, having to, push all of your life force essentially out of your body to make such a beautiful sound. But I did not know, or I guess I didn't realize that there aren't many highly acclaimed winds groups exclusively. I guess that's not something that really crossed my mind. And so if you're someone who is like all-star trombone player or all-star tuba or any type of wind instrument, and you're at the top of your game, what is your next step if it's not like an elite organization?
Well, most of our wind players could audition for professional orchestras as well. I mean, because obviously there are winds,
Yeah.
Not as many as you would see in a wind band necessarily, but there are particular roles they would audition to be a part of. Some, however, go into military ensembles, which is also, it's a really exciting and noble profession and they perform at the highest level. A lot of folks go into teaching, and where they perform some and teach some. And actually, I would venture to say more professional musicians than you realize are also educators.
Yeah.
And which is a big part of not only their livelihood, but their contribution and service to their communities to give back. We have so many in the Lubbock Symphony. Many professors at Texas Tech are also members of the Lubbock Symphony, and also faculty at other institutions around here and other places that come in to play with the Lubbock Symphony. And so education is also a big component of that. So I will say that while there aren't necessarily as many wind-specific ensembles, one of my charges, self-imposed, I should say, with the chamber orchestra, is to try to include a wind piece, a wind-only piece, on each concert. Now we can't say that it'll be every concert the Lubbock Chamber Orchestra does, but in the past few seasons that we've been a part of the symphony, we've tried to include a chamber wind piece that allows the wind players to be featured, exclusively, and not only for the players, but because our audience sometimes isn't privy to some of the outstanding classical music that was written for chamber winds. And so I think it's served an interesting purpose, and I think it's created the contrast and diversity in our programming that I think has made the program so interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to include those types of things, because coming from being on the band side, especially percussion side, when you're dealing with strings-oriented programs, there's a lot of downtime or a lot of just, I'm playing the instrument, but I'm not really doing maybe all the different techniques that I've learned about it. It's very baseline, borderline. So to have that opportunity, I feel like it's very important. There's something else I was interested in that I feel like, because we're on the more orchestra side of things, we don't get into a lot. But are there any musicians, or do you have any experience working with anyone who does stuff in more of the entertainment side of the music industry rather than like the classical or orchestration side of the music industry?
That's a good question. I think a lot of our musicians are involved in a variety of things. When I was teaching high school years ago, we did a lot of. I directed a jazz ensemble and also a Caribbean-style steel drum band, which Texas Tech has lots of these opportunities for students to be a part of at the institution, and they perform lots of music that may not that we sometimes don't associate with the classical repertoire that we come to know as when we think of classical music. I really enjoy the opportunity to do pops events, and in particular, our concert with the Lubbock Symphony this year for Christmas, the Home for the Holidays concert, will feature a variety of pops style, a little lighter in nature, where we combine the classical instruments with some of the more modern music, if you will. So those are always fun. I think the other exciting thing is to take classical music and the idea of all these classical mediums and create a variety show. And I know at Texas Tech, I'm the director of the Ignite concert. And this is another opportunity that I really enjoy, doing something out of the ordinary where we can take all these different groups and create an event that is inspiring and, showcases a variety of different styles and different ensemble mediums, and just kind of showcase what's possible to those who don't see it every day.
Literally. Every time I've left an Ignite concert, I've always felt like that same feeling of whenever you walk out of a movie theater after watching a really good movie. It's just kind of like you're kind of tingling for a minute, like, whoa, that was really cool.
Good.
Yeah.
I love that.
I know we have to wrap up pretty soon, so I just wanted to do a couple of rapid fire questions to end it off. So, number 1, who is your favorite composer to conduct?
Oh, it's going to sound cliche, but I just love Mozart.
That is
everything about Mozart. He wrote a few good pieces back in the day. So.
Yeah, just a couple. Number 2 is your favorite instrument section to conduct.
Oh gosh, that changes with the piece. That's a tough one.
Let's say it was some Mozart.
I will say that as a trumpet player myself, I would say that anything that's big and exciting. I love a big brass sound.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that. How about that?
Also, because you do band directing too, marching band directing. I'm sure you love some big brass.
I love it.
Yeah. Number 3, is there any piece that you haven't conducted yet that you would love to conduct?
Oh gosh. It's funny you mentioned that. I've been thinking about the Schoenberg Pierrot Lunaire, which is a really exciting piece and something that from the 20th century that I think was such a landmark work that I've been considering at some point trying to include. I just have to find the right place and group and time to do something like that. But that's a piece that's been on my mind lately, so I'll say that.
Good to know. And lastly, outside of all the stuff we've talked about, what type of music does Eric Allen like to listen to in his personal time?
Oh, gosh. My wife would be so embarrassed. But I love 90s country.
That's fair. I feel like that's a very solid pick.
I know. I listen to all kinds of music. But when I'm just trying to relax, there's something nostalgic to me about 90s country. Reminds me of my college days. And so anyway, it's just, that's the real me.
Yeah. I love some nostalgia, something that will tug at my heartstrings. But Eric, this has been great. I learned so much about just the history of both orchestra and band, and there's a lot of clarity that even I, someone who has experienced both sides of the fence, has gained from this conversation. So thank you so much. And thank you all to those who are listening. I just wanted to let you know we do have Jurassic Park tickets on sale. You can visit LubbockSymphony.org to check that out. And we also have season tickets on sale. So yeah, thank you so much. Make sure to follow the Lubbock Symphony on all social medias. And Eric, is there anything else you want to say to close out?
Oh, I'm just honored to be a part of this. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. Have a good one, y'all.